Oi, oi, it's your boy, the King Green of Stand Back, I'm About to Swing Peen. Jack Slack, it's the Jack Slack podcast, and we're coming at you following UFC 329. Did they really charge me a pay-per-view fee for this? Everything is on the one deal now, except for the odd super fight. And of course, Conor McGregor's return counts as that. But man, did that not go down how anyone expected. I saw something from like the ESPN Bets account that was like 90% of money placed on this fight was placed on McGregor. And I assume that's just like when Polymarket and Kalshi post an obvious lie that they're not going to get in trouble for. Because who looked at this and said the man coming back from 5 years off, who before that had taken the best part of 5 years off, hasn't been serious about MMA since 2016, and he's fighting Max Holloway, who's one of the best in the world and has been honing his craft ever since their first fight. Who looked at that and bet on McGregor? If they did, I mean, legit cattle. I had no idea there were so many people willing to throw the betting average off, but he was still the massive underdog. So that must... How does that work? How does that work, ESPN Bet? But anyway, ESPN MMA's Brett Okamoto and the Mac Life's Oscar something or other tweeted at exactly the same time. My call, Mayweather, vertical bar, or pipeline, piece of punctuation you literally don't see outside of op-eds. McGregor 2, Zuffa Boxing 2027. Both of them tweeted that identically. So someone just sent out an email to a bunch of journalists who have too little pride in what they do, and they just copied and pasted it on the night. Crazy. Brett Okamoto, one of the foremost people in the sport, covering this shit. That's depressing, eh? But then that's what's happening with Copinger in boxing. Ioli before him. I mean, how much do you have to like ringside seats and the buffet to just suck dick when your job used to be like having an opinion and caring about the sport? But anyway, Conor McGregor came back from 5 years off. I did a ton of Conor McGregor stuff before this fight just to make sure the Jack Slack curse stuck. No, just because, I realised I have been bored of talking about him for longer than most people have followed MMA. After that book in 2016, I talked about him before Habib McGregor, but after that I was just like, I cannot be arsed. And I sort of half covered Poirier versus McGregor 1 and 2, 2 and 3. So I put some effort in this time and talked about how special he was coming up. But without being Mike Goldberg, another reference that many people following MMA won't have followed MMA long enough to get. Hard work beats talent when talent refuses to work hard. And Max Holloway was extremely talented. Dustin Poirier was extremely talented. Dustin Poirier, when he met Conor McGregor the first time, he kind of sucked. He was good. He was winning fights. But if you watch him, he's just sprinting on a line forward and then sprinting on a line back. He can't box. And he learned to box after McGregor, in the fights after McGregor beat him. And then McGregor came back and he's getting lumped up by counter right hooks, hacked apart by calf kicks. There's no just sprinting forwards and sprinting backwards on a line. People get better, but to get better, you have to spend the time doing the thing. And, being bad at it to start with, you had to get in the gym and go, right, I suck at this, I need to work on it. And McGregor reached the pinnacle of the sport and said, right, I'm off to do a con job with Floyd Mayweather, which is still the main goal of anyone who ever wins anything in MMA. That's how bad MMA pay is. You got Ilia Topuria winning the lightweight title, getting the double belt, getting double championship, and then going, I want to fight Ryan Garcia in boxing because it's the only hope I have of getting real world champion type money. And Ngannou to everyone. Everyone who fucking wins an MMA title starts trying to call out a boxer that the UFC won't let them fight. Which is why Rico Verhoeven pulled a blinder, was perfectly positioned to come to MMA, and they're like, well, you'll have to go through the Contender Series, and boxing said, fuck it, Usyk wants an easy night. Have X million, and in fairness to Verhoeven, he did not give Alexander Usyk an easy night at all. But anyway, this is the second McGregor hiatus, following snapping his leg all to shit, and then standing on it and going limp noodly. That was kind of the perfect end to the Conor McGregor story as a morality play. You know, he was so promising. He was so brilliant. He lived, breathed, and slept MMA when there was nothing in MMA. Got rich, did the Mayweather fight, disappeared for a bit, came back for the Khabib fight, lost, and everything since then has just been like, oh, I'm motivated. And then maybe he does the fight, maybe he's just posting training footage, and then he's back to drinking and being enormous all the time. But this fight told us very, very little. I was ready to go out and go, well, Max Holloway might fight southpaw and he might use that counter right hook. He might just steal what Poirier did, especially because he was landing those right hands clean on McGregor off his left hand in the first fight. Those were some of the few moments of success for Holloway. And then Holloway's developed a really good kicking game since then. And I was getting so excited to see this play out. Because even washed-ass McGregor still has a good left hand, a good left counter, and aggression it panics people into making bad choices. And then he came out and he threw a jump flying kick, which is funny because I did a video last week on their first fight, and I said one of the interesting things he was doing was showing the low line side kick and then using that to jump into this bicycle kick. And he came out, leapt across the ring, slipped on his standing leg as he landed, broke his whole shit. We don't know what's broken, but presumably something. And then kept falling over. And Max Holloway was like, I haven't managed to land a clean punch on this man on the feet because he keeps falling over. Do I have to follow up on the ground? Are you going to stop this, ref? And then McGregor basically just, after his fourth or fifth time up, goes, no, I can't do it. And they just call it off like standing submission. And then Max goes over and hugs him and goes, why the fuck did you come back? But man, Max, we love him, but he did not read the room well because he said, I'm sorry, everyone, but we'll do it a third time. Let's get our money. It's like you're telling a room full of people who spent far too much money to watch this washed man fight you, and they didn't even get a fight. And this is the second time. Like, I thought this event was pretty good. The UFC's schedule this year has been dog shit. Since November, they've just put on tons of dog shit, filling every week with just filler bollocks. They got hundreds of fighters on the roster who shouldn't be there. But this card was pretty good, and they're not going to reap the benefits of that because basically, well, firstly, the McGregor letdown, but secondly, like the last two times they booked Max Holloway, who's one of about 4 fighters who have larger appeal than just the UFC brand. The last 2 times, he's not really been able to get going with his fight. You know, Oliveira just mogged him, grabbed a hold of him in every round and mogged him. Did not see much of Max Holloway striking at all in that fight. And in this one, I don't think he landed a single strike on the feet, did he? And on the ground, he looked a little bit reluctant to jump on McGregor and hit him. So twice, if you're a Max Holloway stan, which a lot of people, even beyond like hardcore MMA fandom, casual MMA fans are Max Holloway stans, and they feel like they've been bait and switched twice now. So recently on the podcast, I've been getting back into what could the loser have done to make the winners fight harder / possibly win, you know, with the tools they've got. And then, you know, maybe what could they do if you were going to work long term towards learning something new to try and beat this person. But what we learned from this fight was like Conor McGregor's 35 years old. He hadn't fought in 5 years and he came out and tried a flying kick. It's like, you know, like a dog that's got a bandage on its leg and as soon as it's not looking at the bandage, forgets that it's got an injured leg. But this is the crazy thing. This is the other leg than the one he previously snapped. It's just so, on so many levels, just a bizarre, funny ending. But if there is one thing to take away from this, it's like, well, one, mats can be slippery, especially late in the night. One of the things about going on last is that you can get that. It's not always as bad in MMA and certainly not in professional proper shows. But I know even Cage Warriors use a different type of canvas. So when blood gets on it, it gets incredibly slick. The one I always reference is that there was a fight between Nicholas Delby and Ross Houston, which was a really good fight, and it was called off, no contest, because both men were bleeding, and it was making the mat so slick that they couldn't do anything without falling over. Crazy fight. Go and watch that. But sweat on mats does make them slippier. Typically these productions are very good at wiping them down, but you never know. Marcelo Garcia, one of the all-time great grapplers, someone was asking him, like, why did you come out against Kron Gracie in the finals in China and immediately sit down to guard when your wrestling's better than his, or you had previously wrestled him? And Marcelo Garcia's like, I got on the mats and my plan was to wrestle, but my foot immediately slipped and I thought, oh, fuck it, I'm not going to be able to drive on a double leg if I do that. So I sat down. ADCC is always ridiculously underprepared for what they put on. They put on these frantic grappling matches, and the mats go. There's no like grace zone on the mats where the area of competition ends, and then there's another bit of mat, and then there's the floor. Literally, it's the mat and then the floor, and every time people get double legged onto whatever's underneath the mats, like wood, concrete, whatever. Guys get put onto the judges' table every year. And you're supposed to continue like scrambling until the referee stops you. But anyway, yeah, enough about slippery mats and people getting brained at grappling competitions. If you watch Sanshai, who is, I think, 40... how old is Sanshai? Hold on, I'm looking it up. 45 years old. That was going to be my guess. One of the all-time greats of Muay Thai. Even like when he was actively competing, people were like, I think he might be the best ever. One of his go-to moves was to lift the lead leg and jump with a push kick with the rear leg, or sometimes a high kick. But that bicycle kick, like fake one leg, jump and kick with the other. And he still does it into his 40s. And sometimes it looks like a big explosive move, but the key is that he's very rarely like leaping at the guy. It's always a knee raise and then a hop. It's a way of performing a quick fake into a quick kick off the other leg. The idea is not that he runs out and flies at the guy. So if you are going to do running, jumping kicks, maybe don't run. Just jump. Just hop where you are. Because Sanshai's had 200 fights and he's had 385 fights. Almost 400 fights. And he's still doing it. And I've seen him fall over because it's a kicking sport and that'll happen. But I've never seen him hurt himself jumping. So what's next for each? I don't know. Max Holloway currently has a win over Justin Gaethje. The most recent win over Justin Gaethje. If we're doing bullshit stuff, they could slot him straight into the title shot. It's that or someone deserving like Arman Sarukian, but Arman's been off doing bullshit for the last year and has shown himself repeatedly to be like an actual fucking liability. Between the back injury, weight miss, whatever it was, and headbutting Dan Hooker at the stare down, which is like, I get that you are doing this kick streaming, I must get attention bullshit, but if you break Dan Hooker's nose at the weigh-ins and you're the main event, things don't look good for us. People want refunds when Dan Hooker can't fight. And what's next for Conor McGregor? Dominic Cruz had a surprisingly salient take on this. On his, it must have been like the post-fight show. I only saw the clip, but he was just like, I think a lot of us use fighting to try and get away from stuff or, better ourselves. Because even if you write off everything you know about Conor McGregor, the time people liked him was when he was doing MMA and when he was doing that Bruce Lee self-improvement, my favorite book is The Secret sort of shit. Even if he didn't think he was going to recapture the magic, at least that's where he was happy. And Dominic Cruz was saying, like, well, now he can't do that, and now he has to face who he is, which is a very company-friendly way of saying, like, you have done some bad stuff in the last few years outside of MMA, and you're going to have to live with that and address it, probably. Oh, I don't want people to think I'm, like, shying away from that. No, he was convicted of sexual assault in a civil case, wasn't he? But then this is the thing. I was talking to my wife and she was like, but didn't he have the thing? And I was saying, like, babe, he's not even the worst sexual assaulter on the card. If you enjoyed Gable Stevenson's fight and you want to stay happy, don't even look into what he did. But my policy is, it's fighting. There's a lot of bad people in fighting on all sides. I'm here to enjoy fights, often promoted by people who are like the literal devil. Brackets Don King. Let's move on. Paddy Pimblett versus Benoit Saint-Denis. Incredible. I mean, he couldn't have had a better night, Paddy Pimblett, because like the thing with the Conor McGregor cards, going back through all of them, is that they always knew they were going to get huge viewerships, and sometimes they used that well to get eyes on up-and-coming fighters and sort of prepare people for the future. Young, exciting fighters is what you want on a Conor McGregor card so that people see it. And I think it was Khabib versus Conor. They did a very good job because they put Tony Ferguson in a fight that didn't really make sense against Anthony Pettis, but they put it front and center so that everyone went, oh, Tony Ferguson's going to fight winner of Khabib Conor, Khabib next. And he's just looked amazing in that fight. And that's what you want to see people doing. What they sometimes did, and with Ronda Rousey too, was like, we've got this great main event because everyone will pay to see Conor McGregor / Ronda Rousey. We're not really going to bother with the rest of it. So like half his cards were well booked and half his cards were like, oh, really? Are we just relying on Conor McGregor here? Or are we just being lazy? But this one's quite nice because you've got eyes on, even though it was a welterweight main event, it was basically a lightweight fight. Max Holloway is, for the foreseeable future, associated with the lightweight title picture because he knocked out Justin Gaethje very recently. But this fight between ranked lightweights was far more legitimate in terms of like who's actually going to be doing something in the immediate future. People probably don't want to see Max get rewarded with the title shot. Paddy Pimblett only loss since saw him back in Cage Warriors in 2018 has been Justin Gaethje in a fight where he performed better than expected by many people. He arguably took less of a pasting than Ilia Topuria. I mean, obviously Ilia Topuria came close to finishing the fight, but that fight has aged very well for Paddy Pimblett, and he constantly says that. Benoit Saint-Denis was a bit more questionable. I don't think you could have argued for like a title picture. I don't think you could have argued for a title fight if he won. Dan Hooker is kind of washed. Beneil Dariush is unbelievably washed. And I think he's not on the meta rankings, but on the media rankings, he's still in the top 15. So everyone should be rushing to try and get him and chin him on the first punch because his chin's shot and he also cuts a ton of weight. But the Mauricio Ruffi win for Benoit Saint-Denis has aged phenomenally. So the loss to Renato Moicano and the derailing by Dustin Poirier, which was only 2 years ago, come to think of it, don't matter so much. But they came out kicking, and I was like, oh, it could come down to kicking games because Benoit Saint-Denis is one kick, all power, and Paddy Pimblett has a bit more of a varied kicking game. He leaves his chin up when he's in exchanging range, but if he can keep the fight long, he can catch people coming in like he did Bobby Green, and he doesn't have to worry about his complete lack of head movement and his bizarre posture. If you watch him at the stare downs, it starts to make sense because his chin is up in the air. And it didn't matter at all because they traded like one kick, threw some punches, and Benoit Saint-Denis shot straight towards the fence. Paddy Pimblett grabs a guillotine, gets his other hand inside the chest, so he's two hands on the neck, which is an arm out guillotine. Starts to go high elbow, very dangerous. Benoit Saint-Denis rolls, and in the roll, they came up into a D'Arce position. This is that front headlock fluidity I was talking about years ago in the Slacky Awards, but mixing guillotines and arm triangles, variations of arm triangle. The D'Arce is a variation of arm triangle. The Anaconda is the other one from front headlock. And also the seated katagatame. But being able to mix those, and if you can do that with the arm out guillotine as well, that's very impressive. So there's all kinds of ways you can do it. Like you go for a D'Arce, they turn to their back flat and you sprawl over the arm so that you take the arm out and you're on a north-south choke. Or you go on an arm in guillotine and you roll the guy over and you come up on the D'Arce, or you arm in guillotine, roll the guy over, stay looking up at the headlights and you punch yourself through on an Anaconda. There's loads of little chains and combinations, and some of them you can set up and some of them happen organically, and this one sort of happened organically. Benoit Saint-Denis rolled up into the single to try and make good, having rolled out of the guillotine, and Pimblett locked the D'Arce, which is armpit to neck, Anaconda's neck to armpit, locked the D'Arce grip, and instead of trying to turn him on his side, he did something that Charles Oliveira used to do, which is jumped his legs over. So this was wrongly credited as a Peruvian necktie. When I saw the results, I was like, oh, Peruvian necktie, I'm going to have to stop shit-talking the Peruvian necktie, because it is one of the worst submissions in the world. Everyone who attempts it ends up on bottom in closed guard immediately. But it wasn't. It was a D'Arce where he stepped over the leg, the body and the head, so that Benoit Saint-Denis couldn't roll or go flat to the floor like he had on the guillotine. And Charles Oliveira used to do this with the Anaconda grip, and he also used to do it with the D'Arce grip. I think with the Anaconda grip, he called it the Do Bronx choke, but he got credited for the Do Bronx choke when he did it with the D'Arce grip as well. Very cool. Put Saint-Denis to sleep in under a minute, which is incredible. I couldn't have seen Saint-Denis giving him a more perfect opportunity because I thought this would happen more out of range, where Saint-Denis' power, his very simple but powerful striking game, might take effect, and then in the clinch upright along the fence, I didn't see him just leaving his head out and getting guillotined. I mean, he did it against Dustin Poirier like several times, but Dustin Poirier wasn't able to make good on it. But one of the bonuses of the guillotine is that if you can get a guy to respect it, which particularly with the arm out guillotine, if you can get a guy to involve his hands, you can break his balance or he will roll himself onto the mat. And then you can start chaining into other stuff. So grabbing the gilly and jumping on it is not really like defending a takedown. It's going, yeah, I'll go to my back, but I'm grabbing your head, and then their head eventually pops out. If you focus on the guillotine and you, especially with the arm out, if you punch the hands in front of the chest, but if you focus on the guillotine to the point where they have to get their hands involved, you can start circling out if you stay standing. If they start rolling, you can start capitalizing on it. It's just a slight difference to being like, I've got the head, right, I'm going to jump, and then I'm going to cinch it up. You say, like, I'm working on the neck, I'm not going to jump straight to my back immediately. Ideally, with a high elbow guillotine, you can just finish people standing, and they normally turn to their back to try and get out of it. So what's next for these guys? Benoit Saint-Denis, any fight in the lightweight mix, he's good fun for. He's ranked number 5. Gamrot's 6, which could be a fun fight of like technical grappler versus power grappler. Holloway's ranked 4. I think you've got to go down, so maybe give him Killian Salkild as like a test for Salkild's grappling. For Pimblett, he was number 9. Oh, hang on. Am I media or meta? Okay, so Benoit Saint-Denis was 5 and Pimblett was 6 on the meta rankings. And the meta still have Beneil Dariush at number 14. Fucking hell. But for Pimblett, maybe Charles Oliveira. Arman Sarukin's up there, like he's ranked number 2. Topuria is obviously recovering off a hard fight, and I think he might have damaged his orbital or something like that. But if Sarukin comes back, that's a good fight for Pimblett. If Oliveira will be recovered because he didn't take much damage or any damage at all against Holloway in his last one. So Pimblett Oliveira would be a lot of fun, but Pimblett Topuria, if you wanted to wait, you could probably do that on like a pay-per-view, to be honest, with the amount of animosity there. But what could BSD do to win? I mean, it was a minute-long fight. We've done 20 minutes of talking, and it's been less than 2 minutes of fighting in those 2 fights. So let's do a real fucking fight. Let's do a fight between elite fighters who had an elite fight. Mario Bautista versus Corey Sandhagen. I got so much done on this card. I did a 2-hour boycast ahead of it, and I forgot to talk about this fight. Yeah, I love both these guys. I think they're both fantastic. The way that Corey Sandhagen came in as a striker and has rounded out his game so wonderfully. And Mario Bautista was always sort of a rounded threat, but he's just become better and better. I think they're two of my faves. If I watch, this is the thing. Bantamweight is a division where you can get two names out of a hat, not you, Chito Vera, and they will inevitably have a great fight. But these two, they met in Batista's UFC debut on short notice back in 2019. And that was a cool fight because Corey Sandhagen used a Kimura trap to set up a armbar, which is a great way of turning a wrestling exchange into a submission grappling exchange. And Sandhagen, while he's got really good defensive wrestling, if he gives up his back, he's so good at standing up and then peeling the hands apart. I think he's the best in the sport at that. But he's also very good at one of the best guys in MMA attacking the legs. So if you saw in this fight, he did it he popped Figueiredo's knee doing it. He popped TJ Dillashaw's knee doing it. So TJ Dillashaw beat him, quote unquote, in a decision that most people have disagreed with. And that was to get a title fight, but Dillashaw had to take a year off because he'd popped his knee doing it. And it was from this 50-50 heel hook, or just 50-50 position generally. Guys spaz out in it and hurt themselves. But 50-50 is when your leg and the opponent's leg, so your left leg and the opponent's left leg are crossed over each other, basically. Your foot's in their hip pocket and their foot's in your hip pocket. So you are in an identical position almost, but like the technical ability of each guy to change it and expose attacks is what makes the position. But you saw him do it here. Like he got hurt and he was in a turtle and he rolled through onto the leg. It was so if it was Batista's right leg, it was on Sandhagen's left hip, and Sandhagen bridged, lifted the foot and put it on his right hip. So it was a cross in a 50-50. And he does that in every single one of his fights. And the other guy who did it, both these guys trained with Ryan Hall for a long time, but the other guy who did it, notably, was Stan Lee, did it to Ilya Freemanov in one championship for a title. You attack the leg like you're going straight, and then you cross it over to the 50-50 when you get the chance. And the great thing about the 50-50 is that it really slows things down. If they just stand over you and start swinging, you've got a good chance of breaking them down or inverting underneath them and attacking the leg. And to be fair to Batista, when he stood over Sandhagen after being in that position, he started standing up, and Sandhagen went to invert through and chop him down onto the backside 50-50, which is really bad. And as he went to invert, Batista lifted his knee high. It slipped free. Beautiful stuff. But anyway, two of my faves. Brilliant fight on the feet. Brilliant fight on the floor. Right from the get-go, Batista's trying to move him towards the fence. Sandhagen starts circling, and any time that Sandhagen is circling towards Batista's right, Batista will occasionally switch stances, but Sandhagen is always switching stances. So Batista stayed orthodox for the majority of this fight. So anytime Sandhagen was circling towards Batista's right, Batista would throw the right high kick and try and corral him into an exchange. So he did a few of those. Sanhagen then countered with a great right straight down the center when he did it. The 1-2-1 was landing really well for Bautista. Sanhagen was constantly doing this little dart to get off to his left. So a dart is a right hand, so from orthodox, a dart is you throw your right hand and you glide to your left, like forwards to your left, past the opponent. It's like a drive-by punch. And Sanhagen will throw that to bounce off to his left and then come back in southpaw. And he was working that really well throughout this fight. Something that Sanhagen does a lot is what I call the Poirier shift, which is when you say he's southpaw, he throws a left straight. And then he pulls that hand back and throws it again as he steps. So it's left straight, step to orthodox, it's a left jab. So you double the left hand as you step through, and then you throw the right hand. Or if you do it the other way around, so you end up in open stance, you can throw the body kick, which is what Sanhagen does a lot. But he also was doing what I call the O'Malley shift, which is where you throw your rear hand and you keep it out there as a stiff arm, you duck and you step through into the opposite stance. And that worked really well for him here against Bautista. What I loved about this fight was both these guys use shifts in their striking, but they really do watch the opponent. Esteban Ribovic versus Mateusz Gamrot was one that happened a little while ago. Gets Gamrot towards the fence, starts punching, and he shifts through, and Gamrot just ducks. So he shifts and he steps over the top of Gamrot and just gives him a takedown. Because if you shift and the guy's not moving back, there's no point shifting. To use shifts correctly in a good way that doesn't get you taken down all the time or knocked out with your feet level, you have to be looking at what the opponent's doing and trying to read what they will do. You've got to have a good sense of anticipation. And both of these guys were doing fantastically with that. So many just cool little moments in this fight. I might have to write something about it, because when Sanhagen threw a dart, so he throws his right hand from orthodox and bounces off to his left, Bautista ducks and throws the right hand to the body as he's moving into it. Fantastic. There was a lovely sequence where they got into a trade and Bautista went jab, right hand to the body. So he level changed right hand to the body, came up with the left hook in the right hand, then level changed again, and then came up with the right hook, and then level changed again onto the takedown. And this is what was so beautiful about this fight. Lateral movement and vertical movement. So moving around the cage, like Sanhagen does, to facilitate the stance switches and coming back in on new angles, and in a new stance setup, going from closed stance to open stance by moving and changing stances laterally around the cage. Bautista trying to cut that off with high kicks and sweeping right hands to the body and so on to punish the lateral movement. And then up and down movement, both of them changing levels. And this is what's so powerful for strikers about being able to threaten the wrestling, and what's so powerful for wrestlers about learning to box. The level change to hit the body and to get under a punch and to take someone down are identical, or they should be if you're good. So if you start an exchange with a jab and a right straight to the body, you've already set up the level change as being something that isn't a takedown. And if you come up with punches to the head immediately afterwards, you're making exchanges and you're going, right, we're trading punches and I'm sometimes going to be dipping up and down out of your vision, but don't worry, we're trading punches. And then you get on the leg and you take them down. I was raving about weaves last week. In fact, I was talking about John Garza in the preview. I was talking about weaves, but same principle. By level changing, you get under the exchange and you can step out the side to an angle and create something new. Make it more than just a straight rock'em sock'em robot contest. But of that takedown, Sanhagen turtles. Bautista jumps on his back. Sanhagen stands up or starts to stand on one leg, or pike, which is another way of like shaking someone off the top. And from that back position, I think he only had one hook in. He had like a high ball ride, but Bautista grabs the leg, which when you see someone do it, you can always see the fighter whose leg's been grabbed thinking, fuck, shouldn't have done that. But just like Almabayev the other week, it starts as like breaking the guy down and it ends up as a very dangerous submission. Well, it can start as a cradle. That's how Almabayev started. He just grabbed the leg and around the head. And it's like, you can't stand up now. You can't really do a lot when you're in a cradle. It's one of the few positions in fighting where you can actually hold a guy and know that it'll take him a while to get out. But then you let that slip over their head and you start working on to attack their balance and also eventually to attack a submission. The pseudo-air stretch, you don't see it often, but even when you do see it, a lot of the time it just works as knocking the guy over. It very rarely works as the submission. But man, Corey sat down and did like a hamstring stretch, the hurdler stretch. He had his chest to his leg as Bautista was trying to pseudo-air stretch him. And Bautista's hips just popped over Corey's head. So he was no longer on his back. He was just on the leg attacking the knee bar. And Corey's punching the body, no selling it, stands up to go to his corner between rounds at the end of round 1. And he's obviously limping. And man, he came out and he put on a blinder for the next 2 rounds. He's fighting on one leg. Bautista knows he's fighting on one leg because he immediately starts kicking it. And Sandhagen's still striking beautifully. The counter elbows from Sanhagen throughout this fight were phenomenal. Anytime that Bautista was close enough to land his left hook, which was a problem for Sandhagen, he has a really good left hook, or he did in this fight, Bautista. Anytime he's close enough to land it, he's close enough to get elbowed, and Sandhagen was landing with some good elbows in this fight. There was a moment where Bautista threw an up jab to a right straight, which was very reminiscent of McGregor Holloway 1, the up jab to rear hand straight. But he threw an up jab to right straight, and it looked like, oh, slick. But Sandhagen just took it and went elbow, because you're standing here now. And he got the better of the exchange just by landing the nice elbow. Well, that's subjective, but in my humble opinion, he got the better of the exchange. But at the end of the round, having been kicking this leg and Sanhagen not falling over, and picking the leg up and not getting the takedown, Bautista shoots like a sweep single really low on the leg. Sanhagen steps out, and then Bautista shoots on the other leg from his knees in a split second, and Sanhagen gets out of that too. And you're just like, you've got one working leg and you're defending these takedowns. That's incredible, mate. But the third round, Bautista manages to get the wrestling, and because Corey Sandhagen's go-to is to turn his back, go to the turtle, and sometimes he'll roll on the legs, and sometimes he'll just stand up and break the hands apart. Brilliant at both of them. If you watch him against Merab or Umar, consistently he's getting up, to breaking their hands apart and turning back into them. But it just takes him time, and he's losing when he's doing that. You know, he's doing the correct thing, but he's losing because of how the judges see it. But because he was turning his back so much, and because Bautista was also ducking under punches and trying to shoot to the back, or straight to the back rather, Bautista was able to start hitting this mat return always on the same side, always on the bad leg, putting Corey's weight on it and putting him down on his side. Just the levels of this fucking fight were fantastic. He mat returns him onto his hip basically, and Corey puts a hand down, and Bautista immediately reaches for that hand and starts trying to fold him down on it, Dagestani handcuff style. So he's reached inside the hand and he's pulling him down on it. Doesn't quite get it. Next time he chops him down, that hand goes out the same way. Instead of going inside, Bautista goes outside, pulls it out, and starts putting it up Sandhagen's back as a hammerlock. When was the last time you saw a hammerlock, mate? Or police arm lock, as some people call it. It's what they put you in while you shout, "On what charge? Wanting a meal? A succulent Chinese meal?" There was a mat return in the third round that bounced Sandhagen's head off the padded post as well, which is very funny. But even in there, like, Sandhagen hit a reverse single from his knees. Like, he put himself in a crucifix sort of position to grab the single and start coming up on the double. So cool. Landing elbows till the very end, and then Bautista ends the fight by trying to suplex him. I thought this fight was phenomenal. I thought this was about as high level an MMA fight as you'll see. Striking, grappling, incorporating submissions into grappling. But in terms of like what you've got to take away from this fight, lateral movement and vertical movement. Lateral movement to create openings in striking, vertical movement to create openings in the wrestling and in the striking. You know, it's just, I do this too often, but I'm going to go, mwah, chef's kiss, perfect fight. Should have been 5 rounds, and Corey should have not broken his leg. But honestly, I thought the way he was fighting after he had his leg fucked, to like keep Bautista away from exploiting that, because some fighters will it's maddening. Some fighters will injure their opponent very obviously and then come out and ignore it. And Bautista came out like a shark. He was like, going for that leg, mate. And in the third round, he's just like, tripping you on that leg, mate. And the fact that Sanhagen was still able to keep him off it enough to have a competitive fight. Crazy. In terms of like, what could you have done to win, blah, blah, blah. I thought it was such an evenly matched fight that for Sanhagen, it was like the knee injury. Well, granted, like, you got caught in a Suluo stretch. It wasn't like a freak knee injury, but like that seemed to make a big difference to the fight. I think Bautista's level changes really did tip the balance for him, because that was how he's able to get takedowns. And a lot of his best, like the left hook that dropped Sanhagen, came off a level change with his guard up into Sanhagen's chest as Sanhagen was shifting forwards, and then came up with the left hook and knocked him down. You know, the ability to level change with impunity really helps. And I did notice that Sanhagen wasn't throwing a lot of his usual knees, not just flying knees, but occasionally he'll throw a step-up knee, and no real uppercuts either. And those are the things that can keep a guy from dropping his head. And it isn't like clever. You're not going to catch him with you might catch him with a sneaky uppercut counter and knock him out, but it's stuff that like you want them to see so that they are more reluctant to level change so freely. So yeah, more up the center strikes from Sanhagen, not like teeps and jabs. I mean, up the center is in rising strikes, knees and uppercuts. But what's next for each man? Are the meta rankings the official ones now? I'm loath to use anything AI created, but the media members are also some of the dumbest fucks I've ever seen. Genius move by the UFC to set to have the switch on the meta and media rankings, but then lay them out differently. So pound for pound is after all the individual championships on the media rankings, but before them on the meta rankings. So you switch it, and while the columns are all lining up, they're different, which is fucking stupid. But the only people ranked above Sanhagen were Umar, O'Malley. How is O'Malley still fucking so highly ranked? Merab and the champion Jan. Now, Bautista had a close fight with Umar where, honestly, if you look at it by damage done, because Umar is so reluctant to throw strikes from the top, doesn't attack submissions, and Bautista was. I mean, you could have argued for Bautista having the win there. Also hurt him with a good high kick at one point. But Bautista O'Malley is a lot of fun. Bautista Merab would give him the same sort of matchup without doing like an almost immediate matchup with Umar, which wouldn't be fair for Umar either, to be honest, because if he's just beaten the guy, why should he have to fight him again? I think we're lining up for Jan versus Umar, so maybe either Merab or O'Malley versus Bautista is a great fight. Completely different fights, though. Like, I think if you're Bautista, you probably prefer O'Malley because then you get to wrestle a bit, but the striking threat of O'Malley is so much more significant than Dvalishvili. And Batista's proven that he can sort of scramble with anyone. I think your main concern if you fight Dvalishvili is to try and make sure that it's like an Apex main event so that you get the 5 rounds, so that you can have your big moments and have them pay off, as opposed to the Umar fight, which ended after 3, of course. But then Merab's entire thing is cardio, so do you feel confident in that? And for Sanhagen, I think he's fought basically everyone. He's fought Merab, Jan, Umar, Song Yadong, Bautista, Figgy, Cheeto. he's fought everyone. So the top ranked fighter that he hasn't fought, it won't surprise you because everyone wanted it for the White House, and for some reason O'Malley ended up in a layup instead. Sean O'Malley. Good fight, if you can get him to accept it. Actually, I'm sure that Sean wouldn't actually turn it down. I'm just pretty sure the UFC are still doing their weird shit where they're like, this guy's the next McGregor. And you're like, he's 36 years old. What are you doing? It's not going to be the next McGregor. He's not 36, but he's been around for fucking ever, and it's not happened yet. We'll circle back to Royval versus Kavanagh because I just did a long technical fight. So we'll talk about something crazy. King Green versus Terence McKinney. The battle of the glass cannons. You know, Terence McKinney is good Bob Sapp, basically. I say that in a nice sense. I'm not shitting on him, but basically he's worked out, I'm going to turn up, I'm going to get a knockout of the night bonus, which he never actually got, which is crazy. He now gets bonuses because they're doing mandatory bonuses on all finishes, but he never got a bonus when he was scoring all those first round knockouts previously. But he turns up and he says, I'm going to knock him out immediately, and if it gets a little bit difficult, I'll fold. Bob Sapp would make 6 figures to come to your town and fight your local lad, and he'd try for the first minute to knock him out, and then when he didn't, he'd be like, well, there's no point in me getting hurt. In fairness to Terence McKinney, he does get hurt in the course of fading after 2.5 minutes, but it's basically like the magic number. 2.5 minutes, and then he's fucked. But with that being said, I think of him as an absolute meme fighter, and I thought he was just like explosive and athletic, and that's how he's hurting these guys so early. He comes out with like a big head kick and like a 1-2, and you go, yeah, okay, well, he's fast and he's explosive, and I'm sure that is overwhelming even for these experienced fighters. Like, you know, some of the guys he's beaten are good. Ziam, Kyle Nelson, Frivola. But he came out in this one, and he actually looked sharp as hell. The first thing that I thought was fantastic was that Bobby Green's, he throws a punch and then he leans and then he tries to shoulder roll or slip or get out of the way, but he really does commit to it. And what McKinney was doing was after Green punched, his hand would immediately go to where he thought Green was slipping to. He wasn't just throwing back, like, oh, my head's been jacked back, I'm throwing punches and they're missing by a mile because Green's moved his head. He's throwing to where he thinks Green will be, and he's hitting him a lot of the time. He's hitting him in a deep lean because it's not natural. We were talking about this with my article on Eddie Cotton versus Jose Torres. It's not natural to throw punches to where the guy's head is going. And because you don't feel as safe. You practice this form in front of yourself all the time at 12 o'clock, shoulders nice and high, shrugging down behind your shoulders, being nice and safe. But when a guy's moving his head, you need to punch to like in front of your left floating rib, way out to your right side in front of you. Like they're not natural punching angles or well-practiced punching angles. So seeing McKinney catch him so often in the early going was really surprising. And then he starts getting to the body. And then he's parrying front kicks, which Bobby Green throws all the time, and stepping in and hitting the body. And I'm going, God damn, Terence McKinney is fighting like one of my boys. He's fighting like he knows what he's doing, in addition to just being an athletic, explosive starter. The left hand to the body, like they're both southpaw, and he's throwing a left uppercut to the body, and he's shanking him. Bobby Green is doubling over every time this left uppercut connects. He's corralled him against the fence and he's beating the shit out of him. And Bobby Green tries to grab the head. He reaches out to pull him into a clinch. And as he reaches out, he gets shanked again with the left uppercut to the body. And then McKinney switches to orthodox while he's pressing him towards the fence. So they're in an open stance engagement, and he throws the right straight and immediately steps through to the double with his head on the left side. The Bryce Mitchell special. A couple of guys did this on this card. It worked phenomenally. Gets the locked hands double off the fence. Immediately mounts him, gets the handcuff behind the back, and he's kicking the shit out of him. Bobby Green, studied vet, gives up his back. Oh no, he's going to get choked. No, he's not going to get choked because he's an experienced fighter. He knows the only thing he has to deal with now is the choke. So then he's holding the hands, he's punching over his own shoulder, he's elbowing him, he's saying 1 minute, bitch. And it's like showing exactly what we talk about every week. The back is not good in MMA if you're on the bottom. If you are on the opponent's back and they turn so that you're both sitting, it's kind of shit. You've given up all your strikes. And they've got big gloves, so choking them is really hard. And finally, Bobby Green's able to rotate back into him, get up. Even then, McKinney's gassed, and he hits a beautiful little shoulder roll to left uppercut, Zab Judah style. But he's swinging like crazy, and he's throwing himself off balance. And you're like, well, that's where Terence McKinney falls apart. Because this is the thing. You expect technical guys, technically good guys, to pick it up in the middle portion of the fight. The part where it's not explosivity, speed, power, and the part where it's not super endurance. The end of a fight is always a slog, and the start of the fight is heavily biased towards the guy who's really quick. The middle of the fight is where the guy with the good technical skills can start to work well. So the fact that McKinney's showing really slick technique and then just falls off a cliff, once he gets tired, he's just throwing wild, falling over himself. And he's getting teeped in the gut by Bobby Green. I said it last week, the commentators don't notice teeps to the gut. They do take it out of people so much. And Bobby Green is basically, he thinks of himself as a boxer and he's always throwing those jumping punches and stuff, but the teeps do more than anything to just wear people down. And very quickly, McKinney's so tired that like a glancing uppercut to the hip folds him over and he gets TKO'd. There was a second left to go in the round, and he was saying afterwards, like, they should have let me go to the second round. And I'm like, Terence, we know you don't go to second rounds. We've seen every fight that goes past a minute. But man, I was really impressed by him. You know, I know what Bobby Green can do. He's a bit fragile, like chin-wise, but he's tough, gritty, durable, decent technician, lovely front kicks to the body. But I didn't expect Terence McKinney to style on him. I thought maybe Terence McKinney would push him around, bang punches on his guard, and maybe not, stumble him a bit with just the power and the speed. But he was picking his shots beautifully. Get this guy some fucking cardio and tell him to take it down just a little bit in the first round, just 70, 80% just of what you're doing now. And maybe we get a really, really elite fighter. Well, you can tell that I had fun because I'm 45 minutes into the podcast and I've talked about, I think, 4 fights. Are we counting the McGregor one as a fight? What I'll do is I'll do the rest of the undercard on the Patreon boycast. Let's wind up by talking about the main event of the prelims, as they used to call it, curtain jerker, as the rest of us call it. But Robert Whittaker and his foray up to light heavyweight. I think my read on this, it was astonishingly accurate, some of it, but you know, always with these things, I managed to call at a cool technique that happens 8 times and then completely get wrong other stuff. But Nikita Krylov, I was talking about how I used to be excited for him because he has an interesting kicking game, because he's from Kyokushin, and how many heavyweights do we have who can high kick? How many heavyweights do we have that can kick at all? Cyril Gane, and that's about it. And then, of course, he came down to light heavyweight, and it just made more obvious that he doesn't really have a lot going on. When he does kick, he takes a big step up. He comes out of a square-on stance. He's like, his head never moves. He's easy to nail with punches. His boxing's terrible. His kicks are obvious. And what I said was, look for Robert Whittaker, a guy who steps up the inside of kicks with that jab beautifully. The old Taisabaki Kizamazuki, as they call it in point karate. As the guy steps up into a left kick particularly, you step forward and left, sliding down the inside, and you hit him with the jab. And you normally smack him through the head. He's on one leg, he goes flying. Kyoji Horiguchi did it to Manel Cup a ton in their first fight. Rob Whittaker was doing it to Yoel Romero. Like, the more funky the guy wants to get with his kicks, the more he wants to throw his lead leg and throw step-up kicks and things, the more you are able to catch this, especially if he comes off a static base, especially if he's just lumbering around after you, especially if he takes a big step and makes it obvious. So Rob Whittaker nailed him with about 8 or 9 of these big, I'm reluctant to even call it a jab, straight leads, jolts, whatever you want, big left straights up the centre as Krylov was stepping up to kick, getting his head jacked back on one leg. When Krylov was trying to like walk him down, Whittaker was cracking him with overhands and running off to the side. This was fascinating. And I'm not going to lament Rob Whittaker at light heavyweight and not looking particularly great, because Rob Whittaker is on the downward slope as a fighter. I don't think he's going to win another world title. It would be crazy if he did, and I will give him much respect. I'll give him respect for even winning fights at light heavyweight. What this is an experiment, and a fun one to watch, where the thing with middleweight, light heavyweight, heavyweight, especially as these weight gaps between weight classes get bigger, is that the men up there aren't as skilled. With the exception of like 1 or 2 at the top at any given time. You know, since the birth of MMA, there's been like 3 good heavyweights at any given time, and everyone else up there is just shockingly bad at the, you know, technical, tactical part of fighting. But they're big and heavy, and they hit like a ton of bricks, and a lot of them can absorb a blow too, which is, you know, the great filter. Can you take the punches at this heavier weight? Whittaker is extremely good. He's a very good technical fighter. You know, he was getting out from under prime Yoel Romero and prime Jacare. After a disastrous performance in the first Israel Adesanya fight, he gave Izzy all he could handle on the feet in the second one. There was a time when he was justifiably one of the pound-for-pound best fighters in the world. And I'm not just saying that because he was a divisional champion, which is how the UFC does their pound-for-pound rankings. It's like, if you have a title, you got to be in those pound-for-pound rankings. So it's really just an order of how you rate the champions. Rob Whittaker was legitimately one of the best fighters in the world at any weight, technically, skill-wise. So it was always going to be fun seeing how he did giving up weight here, or coming up in weight here. But there was always the fact that he'd come up in weight already. It's very hard to keep doing that. The weight classes in this sport are big. We're like traditional old boxing weight classes, or even bigger, actually. This is not someone taking a year or 2 to build up to a weight class 3 pounds heavier. Whittaker went from 170 to 185, and then from 185 to 205. And, as others have pointed out, he looked soft. He looked a bit doughy, and he didn't look like he hit as hard as he can at middleweight. Granted, he knocked out a guy here, and he hasn't knocked out many people in a long time. Let's have a look. Well, he's actually done 2 knockouts in his last 2 wins. But there was a long old break before that. It was back to Jacare head kick in 2017. But I think what I got from this fight, the reason that he got the knockout, was that he was just hitting him so often. He was like loading up these punches, jumping through Krylov with his straights, swinging wide on his overhands and his left hooks. He was really trying to put him out. And a lot of the time, Krylov was just taking it and walking forward. So this really was like the skill of Robert Whittaker, landing as hard as he can over and over and over again, finally taking it out of this bigger dude. And in my pre-fight, I said Krylov's kicks are slow and cumbersome, and he'll probably get lanced up doing those. His boxing's nothing to write home about, but he will lean on you. Like, that's how he knocked out Modestas Bukakas in his last fight, which was a terrible fight, and I regret rewatching it to do the pre-fight preview. But he lost like every striking exchange in that fight and leaned on him on the cage enough that Bukakas slowed down, and then he hit him and knocked him out in the last exchange in the last second of the last round. Krylov is a big dude. He used to be a heavyweight, like I said, and he did push into Whittaker and immediately try and grind on him on the cage. Got the single leg, put him down, Whittaker, brilliant at that one knee get up stuff. If you watch him against Jacare and Yoel Romero, he was fantastic then. Which is why it was so interesting to watch him against Khamzat Chimaev, because it confirmed my theory. Like, if you have one hand down on the mat all the time while he's putting in a hook on you and threatening you with a choke, you're going to get caught. Because that hand's going to be made to carry weight, and then it can't defend you. And then I had a theory that if you just turn off the fence when things get bad, go to like proper back defense in the middle of the cage with no cage behind you. And Sean Strickland actually did that, and it worked beautifully. But Whittaker is hard to keep down. So he's always popping up on one hand and one knee along the fence, and he keeps his hip close to the fence so the guy can't put the hook in. But Krylov snuck his knee in on that side and started to put a hook in. I was like, oh dear, this is bad. He's giant, and he's going to get on your back, and you're facing downwards. You're not like sitting on your bum with him on your back. And Whittaker did a little knee slide and turned back into him and ended up in a Merkel, which is a position we talk about sometimes as one of those weird ones that rarely comes up. But it was really weird to see him get caught in a Merkel, which is like a bulldog choke, but with the arm in. But he managed to get himself out of that, which was, it was just cool to see a Merkel there. And after that sort of like first bit of wrestling, it was basically just Krylov trying to walk him down and getting hit constantly. Until finally he broke his jaw with a really nice right hand in the third and got the TKO. Now, I was about to say, I don't think he'll make it to the top, but like Yuri Prochazka is one of the top fighters in the light heavyweight division. And it turns out he's actually pretty, like he's tall and long, but he's not very heavy for that weight. Like he makes weight easily. He's teased the idea of middleweight before. Very goofy striker. I think the length and his use of the jab and stuff might make it difficult for Whittaker. Whittaker, in this one, it was the low kicks that actually were the best weapon that Krylov had, in my opinion, because Whittaker bounces and moves so much on his feet. It doesn't give you a lot of chance. It puts you further away from the check, and if you get caught pivoting, as he did a couple of times, that gives the low kick an outsized impact on you because it can jar your knee. But he then did very well just picking his neck. He picked his leg up and then jabbed with one leg in the air. And it worked every time. It was crazy because Krylov was so committed to the kick. He threw his whole weight in behind it. And they just get blasted with a jab on one leg while Whittaker was on one leg. But yeah, I think the problem for Whittaker is going to be guys like Jan Blachowicz. You know, think of Luke Rockhold versus Jan Blachowicz. Jan Blachowicz is a big boned dude who cuts a lot of weight to make 205. And when Luke Rockhold got into the clinch with him, he just couldn't move him. Now, granted, Glover Teixeira, Jan Blachowicz looked like day one grappling against Glover Teixeira, which was weird, but he's a big, strong dude in the clinch, and he will use that to his advantage. Also, just like will take the best shots you have and probably not be affected that much by it. I don't think he'd just walk into punches over and over and over again without changing up what he was doing, like Krylov did. But then I look at the rest of that top 10, and it's basically all strikers. Big Ank, Yuri, Pereira, who I think is staying at heavyweight anyway, or at least doing his next one there. Blachowicz, that's the best grappler in the top 10. Roundtree, who's an ex-middleweight, so very realistic fight. Hill, who again is going to heavyweight and just looks like he's taken the excuse to do what Kennedy Nzechukwu and Ryan Spann did. It's like, we're decent enough fighters, we'll get fat and we'll win more than we lose. Paulo Costa and Mirzakhanov, Özdemir, Guskov. And then Reyes, Krylov. Krylov's at 12, so he should be like top 15 at least by now. Whittaker, crazy. Johnny Walker at number 13. Yeah, that division is... I'd be worried about him getting clinched and ground down by these big dudes. If Krylov could do what he did in round one again and again and again, if he had the footwork and the ability to make that happen without just walking onto punches constantly. But equally, very low skill level in that top 15, particularly in grappling. But all of those guys box much, much better than Nikita Krylov. Then it's not about like how much is that weight going to wear on you. It's how much are those punches going to affect you versus how much you affect them. So it's an interesting experiment. Fuck it. You know, Whittaker's young enough and healthy enough that he can do this. We're not just going to watch a 45-year-old man get murdered over and over. He's done everything he can at middleweight. He's done as much as anyone could hope to in MMA. Why not? So, sign up to the Patreon, get in on the Boycast, and I'll talk about all the rest of these fights because they were fantastic. Might write something, and of course, we got another UFC and a Rising up this weekend. Oh, I was having a good laugh because the production on the Conor McGregor entrance, I was looking at it going, I feel like it used to be better than this. They just filled the cage with farty fog machine, had an Irish flag on the Titantron, and played some Sinead O'Connor. And some people were like, oh, chills. It's good. Brother, Rising, the worst fighter on the worst Rising card, gets the superstar treatment on his entrance. Now, they might be paying him $500 to get brained by some kickboxer, or to double leg some kickboxer. I mean, that's how Rising goes. But they put effort into entrances and production. Boxing even puts effort into entrances and production. The UFC have pulled out all the copper wire and sold it on the production side. Groundbreaking new idea in UFC production is to make me listen to Theo Von in the middle of a Robert Whittaker fight. And not just listen to him, a quarter of the fucking screen we're going to give him. And whoever else was on his podcast. Someone told me who the football player was, but it was Dean Thomas was the other one too. Yeah, I'm glad that didn't come back. They put that out there like, this is just a new feature and I'm sure you'll love it. And then they must have watched people react to that, because I don't think there was a single positive reaction. When you're stripping away all the fun of fighting and then you're just putting in extra shit, like, this guy also works for Endeavour. He's part of our talent agency. Here he is. Like they're doing with what's it called? Pat McAfee was who they were pushing to high heaven in the WWE. I'm surprised they're not bringing him over here. But anyway, I'll be back to talk about all those great fights, all the rest of the good stuff from this card, including Kavanagh versus Royval, which was great fun. And if not, I'll catch you next Monday to talk about fights that happened. I'm your boy Jack Slack. For possibly the last time, Conor bless.